accepted.
Good afternoon. We're here to talk about presentations, but also about demos and what technology we can use that are being used by streamers as well. Originally, I was planning to do a talk about all the new technologies and possibilities and hardware, but then I figured out let's interview some streamers because they basically do the same thing as we do when we're presenting or doing a demo. The same with teachers as well. So what we'll do today is that we'll walk through the hybrid approach to meetings nowadays, because we've had a pandemic, and I'm also organizing meetups within ING in the Netherlands. And what we're seeing is that at least half the people there, they are at home or from another office, streaming in, looking at us, and sometimes we have two presenters in both locations. So how do you optimize that? Well, a lot of technologies are nowadays quite possible. And the tips and tricks for that I will cover in this talk, along with the software tooling that will assist you with this. I'm sorry about the pop-up, by the way. That's better. So, if my clicker works, come on. I've interviewed 3 streamers. I contacted about 5, and well, not all of them had time, so one of them is a full-time streamer. He streams Diablo, which is a game. The 4th edition is coming out this evening, actually, so he has about 2,000 to 5,000 viewers each session, so it's quite busy. He has to look at the chat, etc. Another streamer is Nikolai Parlov from Oracle. He's a developer advocate, and he does talks like this, but he also records the Inside Java podcast. So that's YouTube, Twitch combined, but also talking for a live audience. And a Dutch streamer that does a lot of real live streams and also helps out other people setting up their streams to use the new technologies. Now, I did ask them the question, you have video, you have audio, what do you want to improve first? What's the most important part that you should look at? And they all said audio. Because if the audio is bad, if there's static, there's audio's dropping, people will walk away. They will run out faster than they will if your video is bad. So that's something to keep in mind. If your audio is bad, first fix that, above all. So this has to do with viewers that are coming in that have the stream or the recording on a second screen, or they just have it in the background on their phone, and they're just listening to the audio of someone talking and explaining what's happening without even looking at the video. And especially if you're a DJ or a talking head or a podcaster, then people just come for you, not to look at you, but to listen to you. So keep that in mind if you do a presentation like that. What Tanak also mentioned is that many modern peripherals are much more accessible due to the technology advancing, but also many people work at home, so they had to buy it, so the prices dropped, and it became more practical to start using like webcams, microphones, etc. This used to be a niche market. It's much more common nowadays. And what Nikolai also mentioned, because he does a lot of live coding, is that some people complain that, well, mechanical keyboards, they are perfect to type on, but people complain that it's a lot of noise. If you're typing and you're talking at the same time, that does create a lot of background noise that you maybe don't want. So at that point, invest in a boom arm, because you can move the microphone around, but it also prevents the noise from coming underneath, but also the movement of the table, because you're basically pushing your keys upon it. So if you look at microphones, well, most of you have a nice laptop. Typically, the laptop sounds of microphones are quite bad. Same with webcams. They're not top-notch. There are decent ones nowadays, but all in all, the quality is not that good. So it's preferred to have an external microphone if you do have some sound issues. And one of the solutions we have, there's 3 in total, is XLR, which is basically the connection you have on top. And that allows you to manipulate and change everything with a specific board next to it. So you do have to have 2 peripherals for this. That's the downside. It's very flexible. It'll actually do a lot of stuff, if my clicker works. There's also a USB microphone that's more common nowadays, and that's all plug and play. You just plug it in, and you can adjust some settings, not all of it, but it does give quite a decent sound, and they're quite affordable. But if you are, like me, walking around a bit, then that doesn't work because the sound will get more soft once you have more distance to the microphone. So at that point, you could look at a microphone like this, which is really expensive, or just get an on-ear or a headset to allow you to walk around in a room and will have some distance or type something somewhere else. And those are also quite affordable. However, Bluetooth does have some quality issues, so also keep that in mind. If your sound has to be perfect, but not just good enough, then don't use a Bluetooth version. So there's video. It's less important, but it's still important. I talked to Mr. Lama, and he said, yeah, I play games, so if my video is bad, people will also walk away. So if that happens, I also lose viewers, and because he does this full time, he also loses income. So if you have stuttering video or this jittering video, people will walk away at that point. However, there's also bad lighting. So at the moment, I'm barely visible at the camera because I'm standing in the shadow, and now I'm getting some light again from the projector at that point. That's also something to keep in mind. So if you do these kind of presentations, do stay in the light or get some good lighting at you. It doesn't have to be expensive, it can just be turning on a light in your room when you're recording. But it is something to keep in mind because people also look at you talking and explaining things. Another important part, and that's what you also do when you have a presentation, normally you look into the room. If you do things remote, you can't do that because everyone's somewhere else. Most of the people don't have their webcam on, and even if they do, you will have a Muppet show of all the webcams of all the people, so you're not able to really pay attention to specific things. So to get some more engagement with people, it really adds if you get some, because the chats, they come in all the time. Like now, I'm talking to you and you're all just watching, but if things are remote, people will talk to each other, explaining things to each other. People will ask questions while you're just talking, and if you don't notice that, and you're 5 minutes later, that person might have already left, so you're answering a question for someone who is no longer there. That's a waste of time, and that's such a disappointing thing. But you can get someone to moderate the chat coming in, so you can ask them, okay, pick out the interesting questions for me and give me a sign that I should answer one. This especially helps if you have about 200 people visiting in remote, because it's just too much to give people personal attention at that point. But Mr. Lama also mentioned, because he has 2,000 viewers, and it's almost magic, like how fast he can respond to questions. So I told him this, and how do you do this? He just said, I just practiced it. So if you're a small streamer or you do small presentations, practice on reading chat and responding in time. So if you see me responding faster, then go practice on it. I thought that was quite a good tip. Another thing many streamers do, and what you also see nowadays with online presentations, is that you have a leader. It's the technical term for an introduction video with some music to get people already there. You could see it here as well. There's a planning, and there's some background music along with a timer when the next session will start. So people can get prepared, they can get some drink, and then within 5 minutes they can be back because they know the next session will start at that point. Do make sure, if you do add a timer, that you're starting in time. I have seen people put 10-minute timers on and then start after 6 minutes. So at that point, most people maybe won't be back because they're expecting you to start 4 minutes later. Another thing they also use is online games. So you could do a Kahoot quiz to get some engagement with people. You could do a drop game, or a quiz that Tonek did was, who is this Pokemon? And then people could compete against each other within chat while he was doing something else and getting ready to do the next step of his presentation. So all the streamers, they do use OBS Studio, which is basically the open broadcasting system. It's very professional, but it's also quite easy to get into. So you do have a lot of extensibility, but they have quite an accessible interface nowadays to start using this. But that's for streaming. However, you can also use it to make a virtual webcam, so you can put yourself within images, you can rickroll people by replacing your own webcam feed with a video if you want to. Don't do that too often. But you can also make a more professional look and combining video fields to, well, add to the presentation that you're doing. What I also use it for within my normal work is if I have to do a demo or I have to do a tutorial, I just record the screens, and sometimes with sound, sometimes without. That's all options you can tap on and off. And then create, at that point, a nice video that you can reuse later on, and then add subtitles or add some extra text or other video parts on it. And then you don't stream at all, but it is perfect for recording the windows within your applications. And what it also helps with is if you have a short talk like this, 50 minutes, that you are quite able to time somewhat like, oh, how much time do I have? Along with that, you also have preparation, because if you do a presentation like this, or you do something online, you have to be ready to set everything up, because you don't want to start with everything not working. So there's ad hoc things that I just play a game, or have an open discussion about a certain subject. You don't have to do too much, you just start it. But if you do something like Nikolai, and you do a podcast, or you record an Inside Java video, you have to do much more research and prepare it. What am I going to talk about? How much time do I have, etc. So that does take more preparation time. And typically, what I mentioned is they take about 10 minutes before they start. The same here, but in every presentation, you have 10 minutes to get everything up and running, check everything, check your sound, check your clicker. That's the same for a stream. So, tips and tricks they gave. Do ask your friends and colleagues to come to you, give you feedback. They don't have to talk all the time, but the feedback they can give you, because normally if you only have a few people, some will just leave, you don't hear them. That's the downside of online. If you have 100 viewers, you can be lucky that you get 1 or 2 responses in chat. All the other people, you don't know if they really paid attention or it was a good presentation or not. What Nikolai and Tonic mentioned is, well, look at the camera. So for the people at home watching this on YouTube, I'm now looking at the camera instead of into the public, because what usually happens is people will start sitting in their screen, playing their game, or looking at a presentation, and that's not good for your engagement. And that's something you really have to get used to, because typically your camera is somewhere else. I also see some people like this, and then the camera is like on the side of their head, and that's not really helping with your engagement, especially if you do everything online. Another great quote that I heard was from Mr. Lama, like, study how a good teacher teaches, because you have to carry the conversation. You're the one talking, you have to keep everyone interested, they have to keep following you. And that's something teachers also do. They have all those kids in front of them, listening to them, and they have to keep listening the entire day, the entire lesson. What they all also mentioned is that even if you're just standing in front of your laptop or your PC at home or in the office, do imagine that you're talking to a lot of people. Not just maybe 1 or 2, but imagine like about 100, and you will get much more set up to do some engaging with the audience at that point, even if there's no one there. Because sometimes people just go in because you're streaming. And this one I really liked from Tonic, that's if you talk to people online, if you don't have someone, like I have now, physically in front of you, do act like they are, because you will be much more natural towards how you act and respond to them. If you talk to a machine, you do react much more different than you do to a person in real life. And from a technical perspective, because Nikolai does his open source projects, he also mentioned that streaming on an open source project, so coding live, but also getting feedback, doing merge requests, it helped him to get other people to engage with that open source project. I really like that part. So if you do open source projects, you should consider this, like streaming online, even if it's to a few people, they are interested in the subject, they might join you at that point and help you out, and thereby improving the open source project you're working on. Another nice one he mentioned was that if you do planned streams, like, oh, I'm online every Tuesday at 7 o'clock, then you also give yourself commitment to be there to work on the project, because we all know how busy it can be. You have work, you have other real-life stuff you're working on. And if you have a set date and a set time, other people will know you're there, but you also have your own commitment to be there. So, takeaways. Decent quality audio and video. That's also why you go to a conference. We have good video here, we have good audio here. It really helps you out. So if that's not good, you can try some recording with OBS, as mentioned earlier. Then start working on that, and start working on audio first. Modern peripherals and software is really accessible. So the past years due to the pandemic, we have a lot more functionality nowadays, so just try it out, play with it. And the engagement you have is different. So here, at the end, people can ask questions, they can come to you, but if you do this remote, this doesn't happen. Sometimes you don't see any reaction at all. You just have 100 viewers, no questions, no remarks, nothing. That can feel very distant and can demotivate you, so keep that in mind. And prepare your stream setup well. So 10 minutes before, check your audio, check your video, check if your lighting is good, that you're visibly on camera, etc. And that's my closing part. I would like to thank these 3 streamers for their interview time, because well, it did take 20 to 30 minutes of their time. If you also want to do this with a streamer you like in what he does or she does, do keep in mind that typically if you watch a streamer for a while, you know all about them, and they don't know anything about you other than, oh, that's that person from chat. So when you start an interview like this, what I did is also introduce myself. What am I going to do? Who am I? So you get more on the same level, so you have a good interview. The one with Nikolai was easy because he's also a Java engineer. So we just had a chat like 2 engineers coming together. But the other ones, it was good to also let them know, what am I going to do with your interview and your data? And afterwards, we had a very good talk and a very interesting talk with a lot of nice quotes. If you're interested in Diablo and you don't want to watch come on, let's go away. You don't want to watch a English speaker, there's also 2 Polish streamers streaming tonight, I think. That's Fivers and Nadine Wins. So if you would like to, then enjoy them. Thank you for your time.